So today's daf is daf Kuf Yud Dal. We're going to start with the last few words on the last line of Kuf Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Amal Leizil. This is Rav Padas's response to try to figure out a way we can get the keys from Rosh Hashanah to the Beis Medrash Yochid on Shabbos. Debar. And I want you to do the following. Tlei Vitalia Vilitailu Hasan. Take a tlei as a yeled, a young boy, Talia is a girl, and let them go play in that area of Rosh Hashanah. This is what I want you to be noheg over there. The imish kachelu, if they'll find the key, which will be great news, maisilu, they'll bring the keys to us. Again, we didn't instruct the children directly, explicitly to bring the keys, but we're not going to stop them if they take the keys on their own. So we're just sending them out there to play. Alma kasavar, katan ochel nevelos, ein bezdin mitzuvin lafrisha. We don't have to get involved in stopping a child from doing an iser, like, for example, carrying from Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. And by the way, this is how we paskin in Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchos Shabbos, that ain't bezdin mitzuvin lafrisha. So the Gemara now wants to support Rabbi Padas. Lema misayel. We have a brayso. Lo yomar odom litino kaveli maftecho aveli chosom. You're not allowed to tell a child who is not obligated in mitzvahs to bring a key for you through Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos and violate the Yisrael Tzom Rosh Hashanah, or the Isa Tiltul Rosh Hashanah in the case of a chosom. And here there's a whole discussion about whether or not Meleches Hotzah requires Machshava Sharotzi Lahotzi, and that's called Meleches Machshavas, and a cotton is not capable of Meleches Machshavas. Ela meinicho tolech, meinicho zorek. If the child on his own initiative will rip out something that's growing in the ground, or he will throw something in Rosh Hashanah Daled Amos, we don't have to do anything to protect him, to stop him. Because cotton ochel nevelos ein bezdin mitzuvin lafrisha. This, by the way, from a Shas perspective, is one of the most important Gemaras in the entire Masechet Yevamot. Kuf Yud Dal. Everybody knows that. Kuf Yud Dal. Ein bezdin mitzuvin lafrisha. Amar Abaye. You know what? I'm going to take the opposite position. You have to make a protest, a macha, if the child is going to violate these. Tolesh be otzit sheino nokov. We're talking about an Issa D'Rabbanan. In the case of a flower pot that is not perforated, which means it's solid on the ground. It has no unika from the karka, and therefore there's only an Issa D'Rabbanan to be tolich, to be kotzeh. Or zorek is bekarbelis D'Rabbanan. So it's not Rosh Hashanah. There's no Issa Tiltul Midorais. It's only an Issa Tiltul D'Rabbanan. And when do we paskin, says Abaye? Katana ochel nevelos ein bezdin trichim lafrisho. That's only if he's about to violate a D'Rabbanan. But if he's about to violate a D'Oraisa, then we have to put a stop to it. We have to prevent him from doing so. Toshma, Oved kol chavim shebol lechabos. You have a fire, nebuch, on Shabbos, and the guy comes to put it out. Ein omer lo kabei. You're not allowed to violate what's called amir l'nochri shvus and tell him explicitly to put out the fire. However, we don't have to tell him if he, on his own initiative, wants to extinguish the fire. Don't put it out. You don't have any responsibility to see to it that the guy is Shomer Shabbos. Sheshvisaso aleim. There's a mitzvah on a gadol to make sure that a katan does not violate the Shabbos. A katan, if he's about to violate the Shabbos, then bezdin mitzuvin lafrisha. Now the question here: are we dealing with a doraisa or a drabana? So here in the footnote he writes, "Kibui lefideos eno osim in ador." Yes, because kibui is what you call a malacha and it's or it's not a maleches tikun, it's a maleches siluk. Some say that's the essence of mechabe, and mechabe is listed amongst the 39 malachas. On Rabbi Yochanan, there's no proof over here that we have to stop the child if the child on his own initiative is violating a Torah law. Be osal das aviv. The case here is where the katan sees from his father in the circumstance that this is the malacha that his father wants to do, to extinguish the fire. That's considered like the av is mitzave libno katan lechabos. Again, he didn't actually command him to put out the fire, but it's understood. And that's considered like machilo iser biyadayim. And that's called lisfos biyadayim. So again, if the katan on his own initiative will be violating a Torah law, we don't have to stop him. But if we would tell him to do a violation, that's like lisfos. That's like giving him nevela into his mouth. So again, if his father did not reveal his das, his intention, he wasn't megala daito, that he wants this malacha to be done, then ain't bezin mitzuvah lafricho. And the story of Rabbi Yitzchak ben Bisna, when he told the tinokas to bring the maftechos, he never told them that he lost the maftechos. He told them, go play over there in the public park over there. So they didn't know that his das was, bring me the maftechos. It's something they thought they did on their own initiative. So the Gemara now asks, wait a second. Are you telling me that the Mishnah is talking about a katan, sha'osal das aviv, in the Sefer, the Kavase? Let's see if we can find a parallel in the Reisha, Gabi Ovek Kochavim, the Osal Das Yisrael. Then you're going to have to say that in the Reisha, we're talking about a guy who does it in order to satisfy the needs of the Yisrael. Mishari, that too is considered Amir La'akum. So it means Amir La'akum Shvus includes any time the guy thinks he's working as a proxy, as an agent, as a shliach on behalf of the Jew. And Gemara says, the guy makes his own decision. He assumes that he's going to be paid for his services. Maybe not on Shabbos, but after Shabbos. So that's called mechaber mirtzono. It's just the guy is doing it from his own will. As long as you don't tell the guy explicitly, this is what I want you to do, the guy is considered doing it on his own. We once had a story in the shul over here on Emek Rafaiv about a hot Shabbos day, and somebody suggests that we call in the Filipino to turn on the air conditioning. Problem, because that's not al daitid nafshe, because you basically bring him in for the air conditioning, Ashma, let's try to prove from a brisa that the Chachamim were afraid of miut amei oretz, that aren't mafresh maser from their peiros, and that's called d'mai. Ben chaver, a katan who's the son of a chaver. Chaver means a reliable person in Shuvas and Maestros. Sheragil lelech etzel avi imo. He's very accustomed to accompany his maternal grandfather Amoritz, and that's where he eats peros. Ein choshin shemi abki lenu dvarim she'einu mitukadim. We're not going to be suspicious lest his parents are feeding him tevel dvarim she'einu mitukadim. Matzah b'yoda peros. If we find that the child, the grandson of his mother's father, is bringing peros, and we don't know if they were mafresh maser, ain't zakuk. If the child wants to eat the peros, we're not going to stop him. So we see clearly that if there's a suffix, perhaps he's eating isur, but we don't know for sure that he's eating isur. Is then ein mesuvin lafrisho. Sei gesund and do what you want. And the Gemara rejects. We're talking about T'mai. And in T'mai, there are many, many kulos that the Rabbanan instituted when they created this whole requirement of T'mai. Because again, minatori karayam rov ha'me'aretz maser. So there's no chiyuv to be maser. And we took it upon ourselves, l'chumra, that in the case of T'mai, we bought it from an Amoritz, we don't know for sure, we'll be mafresh. But there are many kulas that the Chacham instituted, and therefore you can't bring a proof, the Shari Surim, from T'mai, and prove that ain't Bezdin Mitzvah Lafricho. Ela Taima did T'mai. Gemara now says the following kash, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Ein Bezdin Mitzvah Lafrisho is halacha here in T'mai. I T'mai boili sure. Right? If let's say, for example, the child has in his hands tevel vada, we would have to be mafresh them. And we would not allow the katan to eat that tevel because Bezdin's mitzvah lafrisha. And the only reason Rabbi Yochanan established that ain't Bezdin mitzvah lafrisha is because it was T'mai, which is only D'Rabbanan. Had we been dealing with vada, meaning tevel doraisa, then boy lasure, we would require hafrosh. Because then we're talking about it doraisa. And then Bezdin mitzvah lafrisha. So that's a summary of Rabbi Yochanan here in Masechet Yevamot. And now we're going to compare it to another statement of Rabbi Yochanan. You want my kaki, Sean? V'amar Rabbi Yochanan. Right, we saw before that if a katan goes ahead, he wants to put out a fire, then we have to tell him al techaber. Why? Because then he's osal das aviv. We have to be mafresh him. But if he's not osal das aviv, ain't bezim mitzvah lafricho. And here we said that if the katan is holding on to peros that are definitely tevel, then we have to be mafresh, and we're not allowed to let the katan eat these peros. And clearly, we're not talking about a case of osal das aviv. Shalomi das aviv. The Gemara answers, Ella, Rabbi Yochanan sfuke mesafkale. He doesn't know what the din is, whether beis mitzvah lafrisho or ain't beis mitzvah lafrisho. If you bring a raya from a katan who comes to be machaber, that we have to be mafresh and we have to make sure he doesn't put out the fire, then I could reject that proof and say that's a case of osal das aviv. But if it was Osal Das Atzmo, maybe we ain't Bez Mitzvah Lafrisha. Now, if you can bring a raya from the Katan who has Peros of an Amoretz and aim Bez the Mitzvah Lafrisha, we're going to be able to be Docho reject that because maybe in Tvai he kilu, but in other Isurim, maybe Mitzvah Lafrisha. So we don't really know, and in each case we're going to have a suffix because that's Rabbi Yochanan Shita. That is a suffix where the Bezdin is Mitzvah Lafrisha. Toshma. We have a brisa that says Ben Chaver Kohen, a Katan, who's the son of a Kohen who's Shtikl Talmud Chacham, he's a Chaver, and he's careful about the laws of Tumah V'Tara. Sheragil Lelech Etzalavi Imo, who's a Kohen Amoritz. So even though in his father's house they're very makpid on Tara, so the parents are shmurim b'Tara, but not in his mother's father's house. There, they have a laid-back attitude. They're Amoratz. And for you and I to eat from those peros, if we were makpid on Tu v'Tara, we would not be allowed to do so. But as far as the katan is concerned, okay, we're not going to say he can't go with his maternal grandfather. Shema Yachilenu Truma Tmeya. We're not going to be choshesh that maybe the grandparents are being machel a grandson who's a Kohen, Truma Tmeya. Much of the other peros ain't zachakla. If his son has peros, which he got from his maternal grandfather, then we don't have to take it away from him and be choshesh it's truma tmeya because they're not makron on dinei tumah v'tara. But then we see clearly here that even in a chashash of an isa deraisa ain't tzarich lafricha. And Gemara answers b'truma derabanan. And here everybody agrees that ain't tzarich lafricha, but in isa Torah maybe business mitzvah lafricha. Toshma, we learned in the brisa, yonek tinok v'holech me'alvedes kochavim u'mibehema tmeya. If we have a child, a Jewish child, and we have no other possibilities for nursing the child, we're allowed to let the child be nursed by an Ovedes Kochavim and from a Behema Tmeya. So now the chalav of Behema Tmeya is also b'shtiyah min Torah. That's the din of Yotze. But we're going to allow it because this Tinok has no other possibility of Hanok. Behet. The Ein Chosheshim B'Yonek Sheketz. Now, what's Yonek Sheketz? He writes here, Dover HaMeshukatz. He doesn't spell out exactly what that means. Do you have any translation of what Sheketz means here?
No, it's exactly the same thing. It's only Meshukatz.
Yeah. Dover Meshukatz. I'm not sure what he means. V'lo yachilenu nevelos u'treifish katzim ramos. So lispos v'yadayim, to give him something that's awesome in a Torah, we certainly cannot do. But for Hanukkah purposes, we're going to allow Hanukkah from an Ovetz Kochavim, from Behema Tmeya. And all that is because he's not being machel him biyadayim. But in the Sefer here of this brisa, when he's machel biyadayim, he feeds the child of Elis Treish Chosmot. That's also umikulon. And from all these behemos asuros b'achila yonek behem afilu b'shabbos. Even though the milk is also b'shtia, and there's an isur of chaliva b'shabbos, nevertheless we'll be making. And he adds here 4 words, mipnei de'eno machilo b'yadayim. Let's underline those words. The gadol asur, and a gadol wants to be yonek. He's already 13 from a behema tahora on Shabbos, is asur because of the isur chaliva b'Shabbos. Abashol Omer, Nagim ayinu sheyonkim behema tahora b'yont. So even though on Shabbos it's asur, but on Yontif it's mutter. Because it's definitely l'tzarech ochel nefesh. The Gemara says the following: it says here in this brisa that a tinok is yonek mi behema tmeya v'ein choshim b'yomek shekets. Even though the nursing is from cholav asur, it's also b'shtia, we don't have to prevent the cotton from doing so. So we see that cotton over isur ain bezim mitzuvah lafrisha. We can't feed it to him, but if he does it on his own initiative, we don't have to say anything. Silence is golden. Keser asara. So our answer is hasam mishum sakana. No, in general, we do have to be mafresh a child from Isur, but not in the case of sakana. The baby has no other source of nourishment, no other possibility of nursing. We're going to be matir chalav tmeya for the sake of pikuach nefesh. And that's called sakana. Fact the Gemara hachi gadol nami. So why do you focus on a child? Gadol boy umdina. A gadol, you need to bring a physician, an expert, to judge and evaluate whether he's in sakana or not. It could be we could wait till after Shabbos and there won't be a sakana. But in a katan, it's urgent. In fact, the Gemara katan nami liboy umdina. Let's see, maybe the child could wait until after Shabbos. We don't have to bring any experts here to chat up whether the child is in a sakana or not. We assume he's in sakana. Now the Brisa quotes Abishol Omer Noagim Ayinu Sheyonkim B'Behema Tahor B'Yont. Frekting Mor Hechi Dami Idika Sakana Afilu B'Shabbos Nami. The Idol Leka Sakana Afilu B'Yont B'Vasla. And the Gemara doesn't apply the principle here of ochel nefesh. Why isn't this considered ochel nefesh? Do you have any notes on that, maybe, Rabbi? Why isn't this ochel nefesh? Tos has a different catch. With regard to an animal is not gedulei karka. So that's the famous Rabbeinu Avram ben Aram that animals are considered gedulei karka. What about ochel nefesh? So I don't have an answer to that question. I'm going to make myself a note here. The more answers. Right. So again, just to review the kasha, if there's no tzakana, and that's why we wouldn't be matir b'Shabbos. So why are we being matir b'yontif? Otzricha the ika tsara. So we're not talking about sakana. We're talking about tsar. Somebody's very thirsty. Is kasavar Abashol holds that why is it mutter only on Yom Tov and not on Shabbos? And that's because of Meleches Mefarig, that Cholev is Mishum Mefarig. And it's the case of Mefarig Kalachar Yad. It's not the normal way you do Meleches Mefarig. Okay, fine. The Shabbos, Disu Skila, Gazur Rabbanan, B'Yontif, Disu Lav, Lo Gazur Rabbanan. So I think what's going on here is that the Rabbanan created malachos which are to be treated as malachos. Why? Because had you done it the normal way, you'd be chayv skila. When you do it in an unusual way, then you violate a malacha Rabbanan. On Yontif, we're not talking about creating a malacha Rabbanan, which would incur, on the case of Shabbos, chiyuv skila. There is no chiyuv skila on Yontif. And the worst that you could do on Yontif is violate an Itzur La. So in such a case, lo gazu be Rabbanan. They didn't include a makom tsar in the original Gzeira D'Rabbanan of Mefarik Kalachar Yad. So we have now a combination of three elements. Number one, it's Mefarik Kalachar Yad, which means that even on Shabbos, it would only be an Issa D'Rabbanan. Number two, we're talking about Yontif, which is only an Issa La. And number three, we're dealing with Makom Tsar, and B'Makom Tsar lo gozu be'Rabban. Now, you could have asked me, well, Kalachar Yad on Shabbos is also only the Rabbanan, so why don't we apply the principle of B'Makom Tsar lo gozu be'Rabbanan? So that's what I'm suggesting, that on Shabbos it might be a malach, even though it's only the Rabbanan, but they upgraded it to the status of malach. Toshma, again, we go back to the question of Katan Ochel Nevelos, the Torah says with regard to Shrotzim, Kol Holech al Gocham, Kol Holech al Arba, etc., lo Tochlum, Ki Sheketzeim. So the two words, lo Sochlum, are superfluous. Because there are many different psukim in the Torah that prohibit Shrotzim. So what's lo Sochlum? Lo Sachilum. Right, we're going to change the vocalization. La Hazir Agdolim Alaktanim. Which means we have to warn the child and force him not to eat trotzit. Is bezim mitzuvim lafrisho. My love, the omerlu lo sochelu lo sochlu lo de lo lisfu lehubi adayim. The pasuk is not telling me that we're required to be mafresh him, to separate him from eating the sheretz when he ate it on his own initiative, but rather we're not allowed to feed him. Lo yachilum. When we feed him, it's as if we are eating the sheretz. And that's the lo lisfu lehu biyadayim. Such a famous sugya. I'm going to give a shir on this in Mitzvah Shem on Wednesday morning at 8:30 a.m. Somewhere in Efrat. I don't know exactly where yet. Oshma. Now we're looking at the Isadam. So we're going from the Isur Shrotzim, which is Vayikra Yud Aleph, and we're fast forwarding to Vayikra Yud Zayin. Called Nefesh Mikem Lo Sochal Dam. And there are many different Isurim of Dam. Why did the pasuk, the superfluous extra pasuk, have to be written? And the answer is Lahazir Akota Agdolam Alaktana. My love, the Amri Lahu Lo Sochelu. Lo sochlu, and we have to tell them don't eat the dam. You see that based on this doing lot for each low. To lo lisfu lahu biyadayim. Toshma and more v'amarto lahazar akod agdolim alaktanim at the beginning of Parshas Emor. It means we're not allowed to be metame the ketanim. My love to amalu lo titamu. That if we see that the cotton is going into a cemetery and he's a kohen, we have to tell him don't go in there. So you see that based on this doing lot for each low. It's strange. I mean, why would we do such a thing? I don't understand what the Metzias is here. Okay, so now we have three different Isurim: Sheketz, Dam, and Tumas Kohanim. And in all cases, we have Lo Lispa Lahuli Yadayim Utzricha. Why do we need all three? Yashmin and Shkotzim.